Buckle up, folks. This podcast is all about diving into the good, the bad, and the ugly of our bodily, spiritual, and mental experiences. If you are not prepared to challenge your assumptions, laugh at yourself, laugh at me, or maybe even shed a tear or two, then you might want to look elsewhere. But if you're ready to get real, get honest, and get a little weird, then welcome to the Just Chrissy podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy McCammon. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Just Chrissy podcast. I'm Chrissy, your host and the owner of Rooted in Wellness. We are on, oh my goodness, which day? Day 9 of our 30-day reset, health reset. I have had so much fun putting these together. I try not to be overwhelming. My husband Stan says that I puke a lot of information, and I'm going to tell you that the next two podcasts are going to be on digestion. I always ask why. Why does our body do this? Why do I need to do that? Etc. And I feel that way with digestion. Like we just, as a culture, we go eat and we don't think about what's happening in our body or why it's happening. We just I don't know, kind of float along without much decision thinking. I'm not sure even how to say it, but I feel like this is really important. I mean, if you feel awful when you eat, if you're belching, if you have gas and heartburn or reflux, pain, are you taking antacids regularly? Have you been taking a proton pump prohibitor or inhibitor, PPI? Then, you know, this podcast is for you. Or you literally could just help a lot of your friends. Maybe you're fairly healthy, but your friends need some help. I do want to point out that sometimes when I pronounce words, I will take my time to pronounce them out very slowly and clearly. I do not like when I listen to a teaching or a podcast and I literally have to stop whatever it is to go figure out what that word was. And maybe a lot of people don't care, but if I'm going to take the time to listen, I want to know what it is. So when you hear me do that, I'm not doing it, I'm doing it intentionally so that you can hear the word. Also, I want to share the next couple of days information in a slow way that you have a way to retain. Like you're going to take the information in, have a second to think about it. And again, I hope you have your notebook and that you are making notes, because this is one that you're going to want notes on because it's every single person's body. So what first you should know is food does not become a part of the body until it enters the blood. And you know that the Bible says the blood is the life, which I love that. We're going to talk more about that later. But the digestion process takes 3 to 4 hours. There should be 1 hour rest for your stomach between meals. So as you do a cleanse, like a lot of people snack a lot between meals. And I know I used to, and I didn't even realize, but like I would have my lunch, which probably wasn't as healthy as it should have been or as filling. It probably didn't have enough fat and proteins into it. And by 1 or 2 o'clock, I'm feeling tired. So then I would go get like a Hershey Kiss or something to give me energy, to give me another hour, or maybe even if I ate an apple in between meals. The whole problem is we are not eating the right foods at the right time. You must always make sure that you have fiber, protein, and fat with every meal. So you need an hour of rest. So if it takes 3 to 4 hours for your digestion to happen, then you should give your stomach an hour rest. That means there's no snacking in between there. And that also is balancing out your blood sugar levels in your body. And then if you go for a walk, even better, which we just talked about. So you would want a big breakfast, a decent lunch, because your energy through the day, you want to start with a good solid breakfast, a decent lunch, and then you could have a super smoothie or something light for supper. And maybe you're someone who likes to do intermittent fasting, which is good also. Just back that supper time up. I'm really trying to work on that right now. Stan and I pastor a church. I run this business on the side. I was running multiple businesses. So I'm trying to de-stress and get out from underneath a lot of that. But a lot of times we're eating after dark, and you really should not eat after dark. So we'll talk more about that. Make sure, again, I'm repeating this, high fiber, proteins, and healthy fats. They keep the food in the stomach longer. Fiber slowly releases glucose, aka sugar. Protein is broken down in the stomach, so it keeps it in there longer. And then the fats, and you want healthy fats, avocado oil, olive oil, that coat the stomach. You do not want seed oils. Seed oils take forever to get out of your body. I am still working on getting seed oils out of my body. So the fats will coat the food. It takes the enzymes longer to break the food down. Many times, 2 hours after you eat, if you've eaten a nice solid meal, 2 hours later you're hungry, most likely you're thirsty because your body doesn't know the difference between thirst and hunger. By the way, I want to give credit to Barbara O'Neill for a lot of this information. She has a wealth of information, and so I want to make sure she gets credit for the majority of this information. So that's the short story. The actual act of digestion begins in the mouth, but the food doesn't become a part of you until much later. So even though you've put it in your mouth and it goes down into your stomach, it's inside your body, but it doesn't become life until it goes to the pancreas, which we will talk about here a little bit later. So digestion begins in the mouth, and you have a ptyalin. There's actually a silent P there, Ptaylin, enzyme, in the mouth. That begins the breakdown of starch. Babies don't have this until their molars come through around 14 to 22 months of age. Isn't that interesting? And yet there I was giving my babies oats before they were a year old, like the Gerber oatmeal. Then you have your lingual lipase enzyme. That begins the breakdown of saturated fat, and that is the short and medium chain fatty acids. They are found under the tongue. Do you ever lift your tongue up and it squirts out that fluid? Also in your mouth, you have the teeth that breaks up food into very tiny particles. It liquefies your food in the mouth. You want to chew your food at least 30 times. We eat so fast, like so fast. Take your time when you're eating your food. One, you won't eat as much because you'll feel fuller faster. Two, put your fork down between bites. Chew your food at least 30 times. That is part of the digestion process. We don't chew well, and we end up with these huge particles of food that need broken down in our stomach. We also will end up with parasites in that food because fresh fruit and vegetables have things in them. So you want to make sure that you're chewing your food really well. You do not have teeth in your stomach. And then chewing allows a greater surface area for the enzymes that we just talked about to work. So as you're chewing, the enzymes are going in there and beginning that breaking down process. Also, while you're chewing, it allows the brain to send a message to the pancreas to warn the pancreas that it is about to have food coming and it should get prepared. So it is a big deal what's happening in the mouth and our digestion. So the food leaves the mouth and it goes to the esophagus. Now the esophagus contains the gateway to the stomach called the cardiac sphincter. Because it's called that because it's close to the heart. When food goes down the esophagus, it opens, that sphincter opens when the muscles tighten to let the food through. Your esophagus actually does like 12 little spasms as that food goes down. Once it goes through that sphincter, from the esophagus, it goes into your stomach. The stomach is an amazing part of digestion. There's a thick mucosal lining in the stomach on purpose because the acid inside your stomach is very strong. It is so strong that if you're a bulimic, or you know someone who's a bulimic and they're throwing up their food, their teeth will start to rot out. It's because of that strong acid that's in the stomach. If you took a drop of that acid and put it on your skin, it would literally burn a hole in your skin. It is extremely strong. You don't feel the acid, though, in a healthy gut. If the acid is coming up into your throat, also known as reflux or heartburn, we'll talk more about that later, the problem is most likely not the acid, but the gate that we just talked about, the cardiac sphincter, that little gate between the esophagus and the stomach. Many times we eat a huge supper and then we sit down or we lay down. And honestly, when the sun goes down, our body knows to start slowing down because digestion doesn't happen as effectively or efficiently as it does at lunch or breakfast. The circadian rhythm, we talked about that already, is set in our bodies to respond to light and dark signals. The long-term use of antacid is being shown to possibly cause colorectal cancer. And I'm going to add that study into the show notes because the protein is not getting broken down as a result of not having enough acid in the stomach. The partially broken down protein, because it doesn't get broken down completely in the stomach, goes into the colon. Then it needs extra bacteria to be created. It needs to create extra bacteria to try and break down the protein, contributing to the damage that's being done to the wall of the colon. So you have pepsinogen enzyme and the hydrochloric acid, or you'll see it as HCl. That hydrochloric acid is what's in the stomach that I said would burn a hole in your skin. These two are released in the stomach. If the acid is high, they will unite in the stomach and they will activate pepsin. Drinking with meals will water down this acid environment, and then digestion stops and the fluid needs to be removed. Then it can begin again. So when you're drinking with your meals, you're diluting down the hydrochloric acid, and it's like, okay, we can't digest this food because it's just, the acid's just been diluted. So everything has to stop until that fluid gets out, and then the digestion will begin again. So to fix this, and this is common in other countries, not common here, but common in other countries, do not drink 30 minutes before a meal or 2 hours after a meal. Pepsin breaks down protein, hydrochloric acid. This is the detergent in the washing machine of your stomach. It's antifungal, antibacterial. It kills pathogens or parasites. There's another thing called intrinsic factor. It's known as IF. So B12 is a bacteria. B12 and our protein. In food, these two are connected. And when they enter the stomach, the hydrochloric acid or the HCl releases them. If you have low B12, you probably should look at your hydrochloric acid or your stomach acid being low. In the stomach, the intrinsic factor is released. B12 and intrinsic factor or IF go together all the way to the end of the small intestine, where they finally connect and get absorbed into the ileum. And then it enters the circulation of the blood and is taken to the liver and gets caught up in the interhepatic circulation. Much of this B12 you eat is recycled. You could lack B12 for 30 years before you show deficiency. A lack of B12 may mean a lack of hydrochloric acid in the stomach, or they aren't making the intrinsic factor or the IF. Okay, I'm going to stop there for the first podcast, part 1. I know that's a lot of information. It is a lot of information. Get what you can from it. Make notes. If you heard something that you feel like is contributing to your issues, or you feel like maybe someone you know is having these issues, go back, re-listen to it. I also wrote this out on a blog on my website, which is rootedinwellness.life, where you could go and read it. And we will pick up with part 2 tomorrow.